Um, I'm Megan, how do you do? So if you can't tell by the title of this video, I am going to be reviewing the Harry Potter series. Mainly the books and character development, but also how the books pale in... how the movie pales in comparison to the books. Not that the movies are bad, but we'll get into that. So anyway, here we go. Let's talk about the characters, and obviously there are a lot of characters from the main three, being Harry, Ron and Hermione, to Ginny, Hagrid, Dumbledore, Snape, Voldemort. The list kind of goes on. It's probably hundreds by now. But mainly I'm going to be talking about the main three. So that's Harry, Ron and Hermione, and how they kind of... honestly, just how awesome they are. So obviously, if you don't know the plot of Harry Potter, I'm going to give a quick overview. And if you don't know it, I wouldn't suggest carrying it. Go and read the books, and then we'll come back to this video. So basically, Harry Potter is an 11-year-old boy who, at the age of 1, is attacked by the Dark Lord. He must not be named aka Voldemort, and his parents die. So at 11 years old, he's introduced to the magical world, where beforehand he lived with his aunt, uncle and his cousin Dudley, so Petunia, Vernon and Dudley. And he wasn't treated very nice at all by them, but I digress. So Hagrid, who is basically the Grand Keeper of Hogwarts, comes and introduces Harry to the magical world and Dumbledore's orders. Dumbledore's the head teacher of Hogwarts. And basically, Harry comes into this world, he meets Ron on the train, who becomes his best friend, and he meets Hermione on the train, but doesn't really become friends with her right away, and later on becomes friends with her. And basically there is 7 books in the series, and every book is a step closer to fulfilling a prophecy of where Harry has to defeat Voldemort, and in every book there's some mortal peril he has to face. Yeah, that's quite a quick overview. But anyway, so my favourite character in this is Luna Lovegood, but we're not going to go on about her, we're going to go about Harry. So yeah, Harry's quite an interesting character. I really like him. I think he's very sarcastic, and I like sarcasm. One of the most popular lines is when he's talking to Snape, the potions teacher, and Snape's like, "Sir," as in like, "Call me sir," and Harry's like, "There's no need to call me sir, Professor." But there's so many more things like that in the book. So there's a scene where I think he's got Ron's book or something, his potions book, and it's got Ron or Rosalie Bosmet in it, and Snape's like, "What have you got that for?" And then Harry's like, "It's my nickname." But he's a very naturally sarcastic character, but he's also quite an in-depth character. For the first 11 years of his life, he is very mistreated by his aunt and uncle and cousin. He's locked in a cupboard under the stairs. It's never directly said, but I am pretty sure he gets hit. He's forced to work as a slave. Basically, he does all the washing, all the cooking and cleaning. Apart from his glasses, it's never explicitly said how he gets his glasses, but I'm assuming they are his own glasses. He always has Dudley's hand-me-downs. And as he gets older, he progressively gets a bit more dark and a bit more edgy. In the Order of the Phoenix, he's just angsty. But the main character thing with Harry is that he is incredibly loyal, which I think, considering everything he's been through, he could just be like, nah, not today. I'm sick of being mistreated. But he is incredibly loyal, and he's very forgiving, and I think, this is me reading into it a bit here, I think one of the main reasons Harry's quite well, not the main reasons, but I think the reason Harry's kind of a bit how do I kill Voldemort, and it's kind of sad, I kind of think he sees himself in Voldemort a lot. They were both orphans, they were both mistreated as kids, the teachers at Hogwarts didn't necessarily always help, and I do feel for him, because I feel like Harry is what Voldemort could have been, if he just chose the right path. So the next character I want to talk about is Ron. Ron is one of my favourite characters because he's so deeply flawed. Right, so Ron is one of 7. He has 5 older brothers and a younger sister. Obviously he can't compete with Ginny because Ginny's the only girl, and generations of Weasleys. But Ron always feels very left out and to the side and pushed away by his family because he's trying dead hard to be like seen, I guess. Because of that, I'd say one of his major flaws is jealousy. He gets very jealous of Harry, but he also protects Harry in a way. Like, he always invites him around to the Weasleys, and as someone who would have grown up very poor, having his parents have to have an extra mouth to feed would be quite hard. But and then in his second year, him and his twins steal the father's flying Ford Angelica, to go and rescue Harry from the Dursleys. So when people say they don't like Ron, it's usually because of what happened in fourth year. So in fourth year, Ron's like, no, you put your name in the Goblet of Fire, which is basically this giant magical tournament, and Harry's like, no, I didn't, and they have a massive falling out over it, and Ron's basically acts like a bit of an idiot. But personally, I think that was him trying to protect himself, because he's like, all these death-defying situations, I think in the back of his mind, he's like, I can't cope with this anymore, kind of thing. But he also does, through the grapevine, get word to Harry on what his first task will be, because his brother is a dragon tamer, so he knows the first task is dragons. But then he also, and then in 7th year, when they're on their own, a lot of people say he was horrible to Harry, because he basically turned around to Harry and said, you have no family, so you don't understand what it's like to leave everybody behind. Yeah, it's horrible to say that, but a lot of people have got to bear in mind is that Ron was wearing a Horcrux at the time, so it amplifies all of his negative emotions. Ron is a very jealous person, there's no getting around that, but he's also a very loving person. He is someone that would kill for his friends if need be. Maybe not as much as Harry would, although I don't think Harry would kill, but yeah. He, in the epilogue, marries Hermione. Now, Hermione, I have some stuff to say about Hermione. So Hermione is, at the beginning of the series, this very stereotypical kind of bookworm. She's very kind of like a teacher's pet. And what I love about Hermione is, even though she's a teacher's pet, she's like, oh my god, I've got to save these boys, they're going to kill themselves. Because let's be honest with ourselves, they would not survive at Hogwarts without Hermione. And it cracks me up, to be honest, because she's like, she honestly thinks being expelled is being worse than dead. Like, that sums up her character. But then as she gets a bit older, she's kind of like realises that school isn't everything. A lot of stuff Harry went through, I think, kind of shakes her belief in like teachers and authority figures. She's still very, I want to say, submissive to authority figures, but not as much as an 11-year-old Hermione was. All in all, I think their friendship's actually a pretty good one, because it shows the intricate delicacies of a teenage friendship, minus the added extra of death every year. And I think what they would go through, like Ron's jealousy with Hermione dating Victor Crumb, Harry just being neglected and his best friends being like, no, we need to send you food every time so you don't die. Things like that is what normal teenagers would go through, I guess. Of course, as well as the day-to-day life, just general school, and not liking teachers. Snape. Snape. But yeah, I think they're a very good friendship group, a very solid friendship group, and I'm very glad that was portrayed in the series. Next thing I want to talk about is the books to film adaptation, mainly about characters that were lost, and I think we all know who I'm going to talk about. Peeves. Right, Peeves was one of my favourite characters in the book series, because he's just a poltergeist, like he's just a bit nuts. And they didn't put him in the series at all in the film franchise, which I get, some things do have to be cut out. Obviously these movies were like forever long, up to 2 hours long sometimes, so some things did have to be missed out. But I feel like adding Peeves in there would have just been so funny, because, well, he's just hilarious. He goes around like talking about Harry and calling him a crybaby and everything. But minus that, one of the biggest annoyances that they've missed in the books, not necessarily missed but done wrong, is Ginny Weasley's portrayal, because Ginny's quite a strong independent character, right? Fair enough, she was one of the main characters in the Chamber of Secrets because of obviously what happened to her. However, she would beat up her brothers. She did not care that she was the only girl. She wanted to play Quidditch. She wanted to date. She had to deal with all of her brother's disapproval, which is something, like, when I first started reading it, was just monumental to me, because I was like, this girl can do anything. And obviously we have Hermione, but she's very studious, so having this rebellious girl, this girl that would, yeah, she snogged the chosen one in the middle of the common room, like, she's gutsy. And she was in the movies, but she was very meek, she was very mild. Her relationship with Harry didn't quite make as much sense in the movies, whereas in the book, Harry fell for her, like, he actually fell for it. Could have been obviously more developed in the books, but it was a very, like, they suited each other well in the book. And I just love Ginny Weasley. And on that front, Luna Lovegood in the series, right? Luna Lovegood's one of my favourite characters because she's the least judgmental character I've ever read in any book series ever. And I just wish they'd included her more. That being said, the movies are fantastic. I've never read a book series which is as epic as Harry Potter, where the movies got so much right. Like, you look at the likes of Percy Jackson, where they've took this book and just mixed and mangled it till it made no sense in the film. Harry Potter takes a lot of what happened in the books and does put it into film, and it does it well. Like, I went to the studios a couple of weeks ago, and the stuff I learned there about graphic design, about how intricate and everything was, I can't fault the movies. There's just a lot of stuff I'd wish they put in, but obviously you can't put everything into a movie. It'd take days to watch. But at the same time, things like Harry and Ginny's relationship, Ginny as a character, is totally overglanced in the books, and it's things like Sirius Black. He's in the movies, but he's not as close to Harry as he would be in the books. And not Ted Tonks, Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks, right? Their child, Teddy, should have been in the movies, right? Because it isn't until the 7th book you kind of see the impact of Harry losing his parents. So basically, Remus is obviously Harry's dad's best friend. And Harry's on the run at this point. He stays at Rumble Place, and Remus finds him, and he's like, "Oh my god, my wife's pregnant. It's gonna be a werewolf. I need to leave. I can't deal with this." And Harry's like, "You're being selfish. Like, I grew up without parents. You're being selfish." And I wish we got to see that, because in the movies you never see the impact of Potter's death on Harry, but you definitely do in the books. So it's little things like that which obviously can't always be put in a movie, but would have been great too. But yeah, on to the next thing. Wrap up me just ranting and rambling. So obviously the Harry Potter franchise is huge. It's touched all four corners of the world. I would like to say that it has outgrown J.K. Rowling at this point. Like, it's become such a phenomenon that it will just stand on its own. On the topic of how the book's written, the book is written fabulously. Obviously if it was written nowadays it would be slightly different, there'd be a lot more inclusivity, but back from when it was written, as far as I'm aware, I was only a child then, I was only a baby, it's written in such a unique way, and it's such a unique idea that it really does truly capture, like, everybody. Like, even now people are paying billions of pounds into this industry because it's such a unique and amazing idea. I will say I don't like the new book covers. I think they're awful. That aside, I do have the old book, so I'm fine. But if you haven't read it, if you're able to and you feel comfortable enough reading a book of that length, I would definitely suggest reading Harry Potter, because whilst the movies are great, the books are even better. And you get a lot more of Dobby. I have a Dobby t-shirt on, because he's I, because Dobby is like the best character of all time. But no, I would give it a 9 out of 10. A 9 out of 10 just because I don't think anything can truly be a 10 out of 10. There's always room for improvement. But I would definitely recommend reading it if you haven't already read it. And if you haven't already read it, I'm going to assume you've at least seen parts of the movie. Obviously the books and the movies aren't for everybody. It's very fantasy led, it's very child led in the beginning. Obviously later on it gets in the series, the darker it gets. There's death, there's murder, there's kidnapping, there's the whole shebang. However, it is a book that everyone can enjoy. It just might not be everybody's cup of tea. Okay, that's everything. Thanks for listening.